Obscura.
Welcome to another edition of Anthology Obscura. I'm Louie, and I'm joined by Sam.
Hello.
And Chris.
Hello.
Hola. ¿Cómo
Louie,
está?
you got a real radio show late night with Delilah voice going on right now.
Very soothing.
That's
Yes.
me hitting you guys with that deep bass
That's good.
in the voice.
That Barry White.
We're taking
That's
callers.
it. That's all. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm taking callers. Here in New York, what's that lady that gives you advice on like Light
Delilah.
FM? Yeah.
Delilah.
Yeah, she gets a little crazy.
The
She gets a
TV
little
sex lady.
She
Yeah,
gets really involved.
She gets a little religious too sometimes.
Yeah.
Pray to God and your relationship will be just right. Jesus Christ will come down and bless your cheating husband. Don't worry.
Come in your relationship.
That's it. He'll be the third party in that situation. But we're not talking about Jesus Christ in this episode.
But it's related. It's religious.
It's a little related.
It's a little bit. Yeah, you're right. Jesus.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Yes, the opposite end. We're talking the Twilight Zone once again, but it's not the Twilight Zone we all know and love, which we've covered 2 other times.
Yeah.
The King Dingaling of Anthology Television. Right? That's what you said it before.
Absolutely, absolutely, it is.
No, it's the best of the best.
I mean, look,
best.
we're covering one of the reboots of the series because it's that good. It's been rebooted that many times.
One of the many reboots. The first reboot.
The first reboot
After the movie.
Yes.
Technically.
Right.
So you've got the Twilight Zone movie, and then you've got the 1980s Twilight Zone, which, funny enough, want to hear something really funny about all of these shows, all of these, I guess, reboots of the Twilight Zone? Minus this one, and technically even this one, only lasted 2 seasons, which is hilarious because the first Twilight Zone, the original Rod Serling, I always say Sterling, Rod Serling, Rod Serling Twilight Zone lasted 5 seasons.
5, yeah.
But every other iteration of it only lasted 2. Technically.
I mean, like,
Interesting.
it shows that, they've done 3 reboots of the Twilight Zone now, and they've never captured the magic of the original series.
No.
I've watched every single iteration and every single episode of Twilight Zone from beginning to end, and I love it. You guys love it. Like,
Yeah.
we all love it. But like, there's a missing component. So like, where we went and we picked our top episodes of the original Twilight Zone, I could not give you a full list of top episodes that I've cared for in any of the reboots.
Do you think that has something to do with with us, where we never watched it in real time, right? Like our parents did or our grandparents did. We never watched it in real time. So there's like a different charm to watching something that took place, is recorded and filmed on a set that long ago in black and white with the music, with the over transatlantic accents that they have, right? Is it like, because the stories can be good in these reboots, but is it just not as charming? Like, what could that have something to do with it?
I don't know. I think there's a charm. I guess time is. I guess time just kind of makes it better. There's a nostalgia
to the original that these ones don't have. I mean, as we go into this episode, like, it's not for lack of trying. Like this episode of the this reboot series, fucking star-studded. Like it's not. Yeah. It's not for lack of trying. Like an all-star cast, a great director. It's just like it was like Twilight Zone was lightning in a bottle, and like going back and trying to recapture that again, it almost feels like it's a little bit more forced the next couple of times around. And like the times changed too. Like society changed a shitload in the 25 years between the first two, and then again concurrently when the 2002 one, and then again even the most recent reboot. Like the times change, and I think that like the singular focus of Twilight Zone kind of gets muddled in like the reflective nature of Twilight Zone is like, you know, the sort of off version of our world, but like some of that Twilight stuff Zone came true, you know, like, so it's not the off version anymore.
Exactly. A lot of it was very futuristic,
right?
And a lot of these reboots are present day, which changes things, unless you look at like other anthologies like Black Mirror, which is like our future,
right?
Yeah,
versus their future. It doesn't push that. They're not pushing those limits. They're not exploring enough, so to speak.
It's funny. True. And when you go back, I think there's more people that appreciate the 1980s Twilight Zone more so than the 2002 Forrest Whitaker one, which we haven't.
I remember, like, we're not going to go too far into that one, but I remember like
we haven't gotten to that one yet.
Watching the episodes live on UPN. UPN was the network it was on, and you had the fucking Twilight Zone intro done by Jonathan Davis from Korn. Like, I was a 14-year-old kid. Like, I thought it was the coolest fucking thing in the world at the time.
They're all a product of the time. I think that's just what it comes down to. In 20 years, you're going to feel the same way about the Jordan Peele one that came out a few years ago. I think that's just all it is. Like you said, this was the 80s. Well, the one we're going to be covering is the 80s, and it shows. The 2002 one definitely shows that it was in 2002. And then, you know, the more recent one, it's still the last 5 years, I think, was when the season 2 came out. So it's still not that, you know, it's still really contemporary. Not that much time has passed. You know, maybe and I've been revisiting, and, you know, not to go off subject or too much of a tangent, which technically it's not because it's Twilight Zone, but I've been revisiting the last one, the Jordan Peele produced. Yeah. And I don't think it's as bad as some people said it was. I think some episodes are hit and miss, but there's a lot of good episodes. I think the biggest issue with a lot of these shows is the runtime.
Yeah.
The new versions, the reboots that they've done, whether it's 80s, 2002, and then the last 5 years, the Jordan Peele produced one. They all are like an hour long.
Yeah.
It's
too much.
Was the 2002 1 hour long episodes? I don't remember.
No, so when they originally aired, they aired as doubles. So it was an hour on TV, but it was 2 episodes. It was 2 stories.
Yeah.
But even so, you're talking, you know, an hour's worth of Twilight Zone a week. Like it's draining. Like it's too much almost. And the Peele ones, they're all like 48-minute episodes, right? Like
it's like watching a movie.
Exactly. They're longer run times. And I get it, like we're in the streaming era, like, you know, that's the time that it's in now. So those episodes tend to skew longer. But like you lose some of the punch of the original Twilight Zone if it's just constantly going, you know, there's no end.
Yes. You want to get to the twist and the turn or whatever.
Well, keep in mind, like all of these shows had commercial breaks. So, you know, you watch a movie, like you talked about the Jordan Peele one, 48 minutes with ads is an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
You watch a classic Twilight Zone episode, it's 22 minutes with 8 minutes of commercials. So it's the same thing, half hour, 48 minutes, an hour. That's basically all it is. But that was the format for some reason from the 80s version to the most recent version. But let's move back to the 1980s Twilight Zone, the main topic,
we're
the main
discussion here.
To talk a little bit more about this 1980s version, it was, again, the first of several reboots, and this show aired from 1985 to 1989. So, like I said, this lasted 2 seasons technically, but a third was shot for syndication. So that doesn't even count. So reruns, basically, they had a third season just to kind of air, and that was it.
I had read that they were so confident that this show was going to be a hit that they had sold the syndication rights prior to the show even debuting on TV. And then it, you know, like we've been saying, it just unfortunately didn't catch on the way that the original did. So that led to the third season just being in syndication.
And different from the original, the OG version of the Twilight Zone, these episodes either had 2 or even 3 stories per episode.
Yeah.
Which again kind of takes away from the original format of the show, where it was just one story per episode, which in my opinion, all good anthology television is one story, one episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, we're going into, we'll talk product of the times. You're talking at this time, like the Twilight Zone movie had already come out. You've got Creep Show. You've got these longer form anthology series and movies that have more than one story packed under that banner, right? So
I wouldn't say that, because 1989 Tales from the Crypt came out, and that was one story per episode too. And we covered Tales from the Crypt, and that started in 89. If you think about it, Tales from the Crypt 89, this show ended. That obviously that was on HBO. Right. But that was also 30-minute long episodes. I believe later on there might have been some longer episodes, but for the most part, it was 22 minutes without commercials, but 30 minutes because HBO didn't have commercials. But I don't know. I still say that is the perfect length for an anthology story to be told in any TV show. Too. Even Black Mirror sometimes they get a little long, hour and 15 minutes. So
I don't think that it's. We can get into that.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, because I have something to say on that.
We're not there yet. So one more thing I want to point out about the 80s, 1980s Twilight Zone is, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Grateful Dead composed the opening music.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was who they got for. You got Korn in 2002.
Korn in 2002.
Jonathan
Product
Davis,
of the time.
And then you've got the Grateful Dead in the 80s version. Also, obviously, Rod Serling was dead because he died, I believe, in 1975. Right. So the person, I think for the first season or so, well, people were living hard back in the day, for sure. But the actor that they got to do kind of the voiceover, because from what I remember, and I even read, because I had to double check, not every episode had a voiceover segment. Some stories did, some stories didn't.
It was very inconsistent.
And the actor Charles Aidman, who was in 2 original Twilight Zone episodes, Little Girl Lost and When the Sky Was Open, did some of the voiceover for some episodes. And I'm pretty sure, I'm about 99% sure that he's the voiceover at the end of this episode.
Yes, he is.
That you hear. Okay. So they did tie it back to the original Twilight Zone, having him kind of be the voiceover.
But there's no
for
physical
episodes.
Narrator in any of this Twilight Zone.
There's no guy. You never see. It's all voiceover, which they did bring back the guy in frame in the next 2 iterations of the show in the future, which is interesting that they couldn't get someone to sort of just be the voice and face, I guess, of this show, because that was so important to the original. But if you think about it,
kind of hard to top that.
Rod Serling wasn't physically in every episode. I think there was some where you don't physically see him. Some you do, some you don't.
But the prevailing thing is you remember him being in it.
For sure.
The absence of it in this is kind of a glaring omission.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the story or the segment. So we're technically not covering an entire episode of the show. This is technically a segment of an hour, or I think when I looked, it was like 46 minutes or 45 minute long episode, because again, there were commercials. There are 2 other stories, and this one is the very last story.
This is the closer. This is the closer.
With the middle one being like 10 minutes long. It's really short. Right. So it's weird how they would put a bunch of different segments in one. I don't like it. I watched this episode and I watched a couple other ones, and it definitely throws you off when you're watching it. I didn't like it.
I will say, like, you can find a lot of this series for free on like YouTube and stuff like that. And on YouTube, a lot of the people who have uploaded them as separate episodes, so to speak. So each individual segment, whether it's a 10-minute or a 16-minute or whatever it is, they upload them as separate segments. And I think it works better that way rather than like, This episode of Twilight Zone
I want to go back
these
and
three
watch
segments.
all three now.
I'll be honest. The segment
That's
we're
messy.
covering is the best of the three.
Okay.
So
I'm just letting you know right
what
now.
are we covering?
So the segment we're covering from the 1980s Twilight Zone is Dealer's Choice.
Something's up with that guy.
Yeah, like that last hand he won. 6 over jacks.
Matter of fact, it seems to me that every hand he has won, 3 6s has had something to do with it. 6, 6, 6.
It ain't normal, a guy getting 3 6s every hand. And I think we all know what 3 6s has been known to mean.
Now, we got some heavy hitters in this episode.
Oh, yeah, do we ever?
But before we jump into that, just so people know the basic information here, this is season 1, which is the strongest season of this show. Episode 8, and like I said before, a story 3, I guess is what I'll...
Segment C? If you look it up, it says it calls it 8C. So let's say C.
I'm calling it episode 8, the third story is what the last story in this episode, because calling it 8C sounds ridiculous, but whatever. This aired November 15th, 1985. None of us were born here. So there you go. Now, the opening of the show, before we get into the episode, now I remember, probably the only one here that remembers seeing this. Now, I probably saw syndicated versions of this show. I think in 89, 90, I was a wee lad at that point. So I was maybe 4 years old, and I have very, very dreamlike memories of seeing this opening, because the way the show opens, the classic Twilight Zone episode is kind of gone. They did away with it. You've got this window. Mm-hmm. It looks almost like a claymation window, and the Twilight Zone logo and the creepy new music from the Grateful Dead with the Twilight Zone kind of towards the end there, the classic Twilight Zone theme at the very end. It's effective. It's atmospheric.
Even the logo is different.
Yes,
the Twilight Zone font.
Yeah, and I always found this intro a little eerie. It works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it works.
There's that quick silhouette of a man, which obviously is supposed to be a Rod Serling tribute there, and that's their like way of tying it in. I like the intro. I do.
I think they all do that, don't they? In some way, sort of have like
tie him into it.
They put Rod Serling into it somehow. I think.
A
little homage. No.
Yeah, I could. I can't really tell you the 2002
Well, the next
one.
reboot with AI, he's gonna actually be there.
Yes, there you go. The AI Twilight Zone.
Bring him back.
Tangent here. You know what show did a fantastic little homage to the original host? Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
With
Absolutely.
his silhouette with the
love
Robert Stack.
Yeah.
His silhouette over the Unsolved Mysteries logo because he's not around anymore. So I just love how they were able to kind of, even though there's no host, they still kind of are throwing it back to the OG guy who everyone remembers from the show. They do something similar with this. You're right, but it's really it's hard to make out.
There's a silhouetted figure, and that's what you can. If you're a Twilight Zone fan, you're gonna glean from that.
And I can tell you right now, this is like 720p we're watching, so this is not the most HD version of this episode. Is what we were able to watch. So the other 2 segments, I'm just not going to get into them because we'll be here all night. The first one's called Act Break. The second one's called The Burning Man, and not the festival out in the desert. So those are the first 2 stories in this episode, with our segment, Dealer's Choice, being the third. Now, first thing I want to hit, big one here. This was directed by Wes Craven, who everyone knows Wes Craven.
Yeah, we don't need to go into his filmography.
No.
Yeah.
If you're a casual horror fan, you know exactly who Wes Craven is.
He actually directed a couple episodes of this series, or a couple of segments rather of this.
Did he direct a Bruce Willis one?
I think so. The Saturday one, the first one, right? The very first segment. Yeah.
It's funny that he's the guy they kind of directed to take on the big actor, the big names. Yeah. Even though at the time these people weren't as big of a name
I mean,
as they went on to be.
Yeah. Like some of them I'd say, were in the middle of their careers. Some of them were kind of more toward the end, some kind of toward the beginning, but it's a good ensemble in this episode. It's a really good ensemble. I
will say now, we're about to get into the cast right now. Every single actor in this episode went on to be known for something else in a different show or movie. Minus maybe one of them, but for the most part, they all went on to do
pretty
big
storied
things.
careers.
Yes, around for a long time. And let's get into the cast, because I think that's really why. Also, before this, Chris, you picked this. We're picking something you chose to cover. This was an episode you recommended we cover. So, little shout out to you, because I forgot about this episode.
I picked it because of this cast and this director. Like, that's 100% why I picked it. Like, I was just watching it. Like, I couldn't tell you the first time I watched it, but I remember watching it again, like, recently. And I was like, fuck, like, this is a great cast. Like, we got to cover this.
So, speaking of cast, let's jump down each person here. Very important.
Yeah.
First up, we got Dan Hedaya. Everyone's favorite. He's either a grumpy father or a bad guy, like this horrible militant bad guy. Addams Family, Clueless, Night at the Roxbury.
Mr. Butabi.
Yes, he is literally the same.
Daylight. He's in Daylight. He's in
Commando.
First Wives Club. Shaft. He's in everything. He's in everything.
Blood Simple.
Yeah.
I want to again. He is the Cuban bad guy in Commando. Yes. The guy isn't even Hispanic.
No, not even close.
He is one of those ethnically ambiguous actors. He's I think technically I googled this. He's from New York. Like all of us.
From Brooklyn.
Yeah. No, I think he was in Bensonhurst, I believe is where he was raised, right? And you could tell he's got a New York accent.
Oh, yeah.
Old school New York accent.
All I ever think of when I think of him is Cher.
Yeah. Yes. He is the dad in Clueless. He's literally Clueless, Not at the Roxbury. Same character.
Yeah,
100%.
Same character.
Yes, he's calling everyone an idiot. He's great. He's great.
And that's how I know him the most.
Well, Addams
I love
Family.
Both of those movies going on.
Yes,
and
Addams Family.
Yes.
I think the first thing I ever saw him in as a kid was Addams Family.
Yeah,
and then I
think
remember like obviously Clueless me and Sammy love Night at the Roxbury, so we know him from that. And then watching Commando, I always remember him being the bad guy. And Blood Simple, which is a great movie, he's in that. That's not a silly role like Clueless or like Addams Family. Next name, and I don't even think we need to even say the stuff he's been. Morgan Freeman. There you go. Big Daddy Morgan Freeman. Everybody knows Morgan Freeman. He's a meme at this point. So
at the time of this episode, he probably was fourth or fifth tier of the other guys in this episode. Like he wasn't quite at the peak of his career yet. His career kind of took off a few years after this. Well,
I know Lean on Me was a big movie for him.
Which I think might have been around the same time. A little bit after. But like I feel like you couldn't imagine Morgan Freeman doing like network TV nowadays.
No. It's Morgan Freeman. Come on now. But yeah, it's without honestly, everyone's great in this, but like it's Morgan Freeman. So you know what you're getting with him. And even for something as silly as this episode, he's great in it. Like it's Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Right.
Next up, we've got Barney Martin, Jerry's dad on Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes. Who is literally playing the same character in this.
He's just a goofy, dopey guy.
It's like a more innocent version of that character in this. And honestly, he kind of like, he bookends the episode. He's in the beginning, leaves to go to the bathroom.
For the main portion of it.
So odd.
And then comes back. But yeah, as soon as I saw him, Jerry's dad.
That's it.
He's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
but I think the three of us.
He's most notably known as Morty Seinfeld.
Yes,
forever.
that's what he'll always. And that was a few years after this, literally.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it wasn't that like a couple years. What 5-6 years after this?
Yeah,
he was on that show. Next up, another guy who has been around a long time. It's Jarrett Morris. I believe it's
Garrett
Jarrett Morris.
Morris.
Garrett Morris. Garrett. Whatever.
The first black cast member on Saturday Night Live.
Yes, that was what I was about to say. That SNL. I've always loved him. The Stuff. I'm a big fan of The Stuff. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that horror movie. Killer Yogurt. He was in that. Cooley High. Another sitcom. I'm a big fan. Two Broke Girls.
He was in the Wayans Brothers too, bro.
And the Wayans
He was in
Brothers.
everything.
Yeah, he's been in, and he's been one of those guys that's been in so much stuff. If you go on this guy's filmography, it's kind of chaos. Just you forget all the stuff.
All the things he's been in. Yeah.
And he kind of plays a similar role in everything. Like during this time,
He's a
'cause
shit
his character-
talker.
Yeah, like a fast, quick-witted shit talker.
Yeah.
He's excellent. And the last person on the list is another guy who's been in a ton of stuff.
Also in Blood Simple.
Yes. And he also is in a lot of movies he's one of those guys that was in the like 70s, 80s, like many decades. Emmett Walsh. Like you said, Blood Simple, Blade Runner.
Emmett.
Is it
Serpico.
Emmett?
Yeah.
Emmett.
It's a tongue twister.
Yes. Blade Runner. Harry and the Hendersons. Another anthology show. He was on Tales from the Crypt, Collection Complete, an episode I love. Collection Complete is probably one of my favorite not Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt episodes. I could see us covering that one in the future.
That'd be cool.
He is the crappy husband in that one that does not like animals.
Ironically,
and I'll leave it at that.
He's crappy husband here, apparently.
Oh, look, it's because of my wife walking out at me. I know I was yelling and screaming at her too much, but, it hardly seems fair, that I get a hot seat down there with my name on it just because a little screaming and yelling.
So, Dealer's Choice follows 4 friends. We got Marty, we've got Tony, we've got Peter, and we've got Jake. And it's their poker night get-together. Curmudgeon-y old men. Not even old. They're like middle-aged. Technically, they're like
middle-aged.
Like Emmett Walsh was like 45 years old in this or something like that. Like he wasn't even that old when you think about
they
it.
all looked like hammered shit though. They all
Yeah. Well, it worked for the.
You know what I mean? It's
the
like you just are used to these guys being old men, so you look at them and they're old men no matter what.
Morgan
Dan
Freeman's
Hedaya-
Morgan
so
Freeman
bad.
was fucking born old.
Yeah.
Yes. Dan Hedaya's 45 in this.
Yeah.
Let that sink in. He's 45 years old in this.
Still
living
kicking.
hard in the
He's
80s.
still
Living hard in
kicking.
the 80s.
These guys are all smoking cigarettes. They're drinking the booze.
No,
Old school.
they're not drinking booze because they're out of beer.
They drank all the beer, and that
Yeah.
plays
Drank all
into
the beer.
they drank all of the beer. And they're joined by a mysterious figure, Nick, who is their friend, or he's saying he's their friend Norman. It's his cousin,
Right.
and he couldn't make it.
So he's
This
a
is what
stand-in.
Nick claims. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
stand-in. He's going to be playing poker with these guys, and Norman couldn't make it.
Right.
So what ends up happening is they start to notice they're talking a lot of shit. There's a lot of shit talking, basically.
Yeah,
between
they're
these
just a
guys.
bunch of guys shooting
Yeah.
the shit, playing
Hanging
poker, talking about their lives,
men's men.
stuff.
They're calling
stuff.
each other ladies. Like,
Yeah.
how you old
Talking
school
about
lingo.
the all ball and chain.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Like I said, curmudgeon-y. That's
Curmudgeon
basically
is the perfect word.
Yes, that's kind of how they all don't like their wives. I
Yeah.
think they're all married. It's kind of
Yeah.
implied. They're all wearing wedding bands if you look
Yeah.
at most of them. I think except for Nick, which
Yeah.
plays into the
Right,
obvious
right,
plot
right.
of this. But they're all, grumpy and this, that. The wife wants me to do this. I don't want to go. This one beat his wife or something, yelled
Yeah,
at her.
she left. She left. She's
him.
gone.
They're all having issues. They're all kind of crappy. Except for is it I think Peter, right? Is it Pete? No, Jake. Which one is Barney Martin? Forget which one.
He's Marty. He's Marty.
Marty. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Barney Martin's character, Marty, is like the harmless, innocent one.
The simp.
He's the
He's the
one.
simp.
Goofy.
He's the simp.
Yeah.
He's the good nature. He's not talking shit while
Right.
these guys are at the table. He's kind of lost half the time. Doesn't even know how to play half the games
Making
that they're
some
playing.
jokes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just hanging out.
So Nick, they're starting to notice that Nick's throwing down a bunch of sixes, an abundance of sixes.
Yeah.
666. Every hand.
A lot of them,
is
Nick.
a 6.
Nick's throwing way too many 6s.
Too many 6s. So Nick gets up to go get a glass of water. And because of all these 6s, the boys start to think that he's the devil. Legitimately. Yeah. That's why.
Nothing else makes sense.
Right.
Nothing else makes sense. There's no coincidences here.
But they
He's
also
the devil.
like, well, are you sure that he got invited by Norm or whatever his name is? You know, they're kind of suspicious, and the 6s don't help.
No, yeah, the 6s are making them quite suspicious that he is Satan.
Right.
Yes.
So what ends up happening? Nick comes back, legitimately reveals himself as the devil. I'm Satan. Yes, you guys are right. You caught
got me.
Yes, you got me. I am Satan, and now I need to take one of you guys back to hell. Your soul is coming with me back to hell.
Womp
and
womp.
they don't want to hear any of that. They're all shook. One of them is saying like, "Oh, I got those chest pains. No, I'm feeling good."
Yeah,
The
no,
other-
and then
all
they
of a
start
sudden-
arguing with each other over who's the one that's going to hell. And, weren't you
Yeah.
saying your chest was hurting before? No, I'm good.
Yeah.
You're the piece of crap that's going. They turn on each other quite quick.
Very
They
quickly,
throw each other
very
under the bus
quickly.
real fast.
Yes, real fast.
As though the devil doesn't already know.
Right.
No, of course. And Nick realized that these guys, they're gambling guys. They play poker. They like to play card games. And he goes, "Look, I'll give you guys a chance. We'll put down some cards, and I think whoever gets the highest card is going back, or whoever gets the highest card is going back to hell. Yeah, I think it's the highest because of what happens later.
Right.
Whoever picks the highest card is going back to hell. You are the one that is chosen." So he's leaving it up to chance. What happens? Peter picks the shitty card. He's the odd man out. And Nick is like, "You're coming back with me." And Morgan Freeman is like, no. Give this man a chance. He needs a fighting chance. Let's play one more game.
Play a hand.
This time,
Play a hand.
They're going to play low ball poker, which
Low
basically
ball.
means the shitty hand, the lowest hand, wins.
Right.
So what ends up happening? They're putting down cards. Really tense scene. They're putting them down. 5, 5, 5, 5. He's got all 5s. Nick, obviously, he's the devil. And they're
getting the
assuming
6s.
he's picking all the 6s, so he's going to lose because the lower hand wins. 6, 6, 6. They get down to the face down cards. Each of them have one card left, face down, flip them. What happens? He's got the, Peter's got Peter's got another 5, all low cards. And what happens? Nick pulls over the death card, which I knew was
tarot card.
Which I knew was suspect because I was like, dude, that wasn't even in the deck.
It's not in the deck. It's not in any deck of cards. Come on.
I was like, what the hell does that even mean? Why would there just
death
be a
card.
random tarot card
Who shuffled these?
in the pile? Who shuffled these? Well, Nick shuffled them in that nice cutaway that obviously wasn't Dan Hedaya. It was somebody else doing it. So what happens? Pulls a death card. Nick tells Peter, "You're coming with me.
It's time
You're
to
coming
go,
hell.
pal."
It's a wrap for you." So what happens? Marty comes back to the room from taking a dump. He was in there for a while reading the mystery.
He was in there for a while.
Yeah.
He misses the entire runtime of the episode off screen.
And I think Peter even says he likes to read his Mr. Bubbles packaging.
Yes, yeah.
Which was an
That's what you
interesting.
do when you don't have a phone or
you don't have a
paper.
phone. Yeah, I used to read like the air freshener when I'm taking a dump in there. It happens.
Yeah.
It's 1985, guys. There's no
right.
iPhones.
That's what they did.
Right. So Marty comes back into the fold.
So Marty comes back, and since there's this big scuffle, Peter's dragging his feet. Nick's like, "You're coming with me," ifs, ands, or buts. Marty is confused by the tarot death card.
Yeah.
Touches it, and since he's a good-hearted person, this bright light shines and fills the room.
Breaks
and
the
it's
illusion.
Yes. Reveals that the card is actually a 6 card, leading Peter to being the winner because technically Nick
the
got
lower
the
hand.
higher hand. Well,
We're
Nick
on
got
to
the
you.
higher hand. He's
Right.
got the lower hand.
Right.
The devil is a trickster. Did you
devil-
expect the devil to play fair?
Which they should have seen that coming. He was
Right.
obviously playing a trick on them. He was lying to them, being a jerk, being deceptive. He is Satan.
He is.
So they realized they caught him cheating. Nick decides, all right, I won't take you guys to hell. None of you are coming with me. I do like that he invites them to one game next time.
He says, he tells him like, "Oh, I hope I'll see you all soon. We'll play again." Like essentially meaning like, dudes, one day you're gonna die and you're all coming to hell.
Exactly.
Y'all are all coming to hell, and we're gonna play poker. Okay. But right before Nick leaves, he does this whole Satan magic, and the guys go into the kitchen.
He wants to make up for trying to cheat him. He does.
Yeah. And they're all happy. They're all like,
good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. And he even says, he's like, don't tell anyone.
Not a bad guy.
I'm not a terrible guy. I'm just Satan. But yeah, the guys are all happy. They're all chatting amongst each other, kind of talking shit again. They go into the kitchen. Lo and behold, Satan left them this delicious meal of fruit.
Bounty.
It's like fruit and cold cuts and things.
Yeah. It's a buffet of
cornucopia,
meat, fruit, and a fully stocked fridge of beer.
He's definitely trying to raise their cholesterol or something in this. With
all these, so he can get to them quicker.
All these hams and stuff that are on.
But these guys are fucking thrilled. They're fucking thrilled. The devil has magic.
So silly.
He gives them a magic bounty of food. He couldn't throw them a couple of bucks or anything, like put some money in their bank accounts. No, these guys are so fucking simple. They're thrilled by a fucking fridge of beer.
A fridge, because that's a joke that happens earlier in the episode where they run out of beer. Like you hinted at it, Chris.
Yeah.
That they drank all the beer, so it ends with them being a full, literally top to bottom fridge full of beer and a plethora of cold cuts and grapes and cheeses that they can eat. They all go back to their poker game, and they're all talking amongst each other. And one of the, Peter's like, "Oh, I might go pay the wife a visit, cheer her up."
They seem to maybe have changed their ways a little bit.
Yeah. One of them is saying they're gonna go to church.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman doesn't say anything.
He says he wants to take the guys fishing, and then they're all like, I might do something else instead.
Yeah.
Yes. So they're all changing their ways because of this experience with Satan.
Reformed.
And they're all reformed. They're all going to be better husbands and better people. Not really, because they're still chowing down on like their hams and smoking their cigarettes and drinking their beers. But hey, it was 85.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, that was Dealer's Choice.
What's going on? Nick's the devil and Peter's played. How much? $19.
That's if Pete wins. Pete loses. Nick there gets to take his soul.
Now, Sammy. I'm going out. When I watched this, I was like, I wonder what my sister thinks of this episode.
Man.
What did you think of Dealer's Choice? What did you think of this segment? Because technically, again, it's not an episode.
Okay. It's really hard for me to not enjoy anything that we discuss on this, on our podcast. I love everything that we watch for different reasons. But it was so silly. It was so silly to me.
Now, you always, and you tend to do it more when there's child actors in the episodes.
Oh,
you always
God,
crap on the acting. You've got to admit, this isn't terrible.
No, not terrible. I think it's hard to differentiate like the bad acting with the bad dialogue. The dialogue's silly. It's so it was very comedic, which is okay, and that's very in the realm of Wes Craven also. But I found it so silly. I found Nick, that the character of Satan or the devil, to be completely non-threatening. I didn't think it was scary at all. And when he revealed he was a devil, I didn't have the shivers. Like it just it missed it a little bit for me. And I think, and this plays into the runtime, my issue was that it felt incomplete. Like I still needed some things answered or some things discussed or covered. I thought it was just a little wild that the devil was sitting at the table and they were just willingly, I know it's TV. I'm not stupid.
Right.
But they were so willing to play this game with him. The door's right there. You're gonna even try and leave. Yeah. And then the guy leaving in the bathroom all that time. It just, I don't know. There was just something about it I did I'm always fascinated and interested, however, in the way that devil and Satan is depicted in film and TV, because it, just as anything like religious, we created what he looked like, right? So it started off that he was a big, crazy, fucking furry dragon. And then in like the Renaissance era, he was almost like a minotaur. He was like a human, but had legs. And then we get to like the later, and then he started to be even more human-like, and now he's something, he's Dan Hedaya, you know? So I'm always intrigued and always excited to see what he's going to look like next. And it's this guy.
I think
I think that's cool.
Yeah. So the way I took it with Dan Hedaya, Nick being Satan, it's a very Twilight Zone-esque way of portraying the devil as just this like basic looking guy.
Yeah.
So there's an episode of the Twilight Zone where, and I forget the name of the episode, I don't have it in front of me, where a guy, it's not one of my favorites, but it's one I really like, where a guy who's also like into gambling and a criminal, you know, he's given by what he thinks is an angel, women, money, cars, you know, beautiful home. He's given all the luxuries in life. He never loses in gambling, to the point that it becomes boring. Every woman wants him. Every time he plays the slots or plays blackjack, he always wins. Yeah. That it almost becomes like torturous, that he never, it never stops. There's no out. He always wins. And at the end, this angel who looks like a normal guy in all white, you know, he tells him, look, he goes, listen, I want to go to hell. The guy tells him, I want to go to hell. You know, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be in heaven. I want to be in hell. And the guy who you think is an angel tells him, what makes you think this is heaven? This is the other place. So it's almost like all the things he wanted were, you know, I know I'm going off on a little tangent here.
No, but that's...
But what throws you off is that this guy looks like a normal,
unassuming,
like there's unassuming. Yes, right. That's a better word.
And that's what I think I enjoyed the most with the episode.
Yeah,
that his character is just a normal dude. And
and
it is obviously intentional, and you're not supposed to fear him. One of my favorite moments in the episode, when they're like, "Oh, what the hell would the devil be doing in New Jersey?" And he's like, "Well, that's exactly where you would find the devil." Yeah. Everybody shits on Jersey. Jersey's not that bad. Everybody shits on Jersey.
That must have been a joke. That must have been like a New Jersey joke. 100%.
Oh, it was 1,000%.
To go back
like,
to like
he doesn't change his character at all. Like he doesn't.
No, it's very monotone.
When they find out that he's the devil, there's not like a switch in the way that he talks or anything like that. He's the same person.
Yes,
just
he
through
gets
the
a
entire
little
episode.
He gets a little wide-eyed towards the end, where he's like, just to kind of be a little more intimidating. Where like there's no like he doesn't blink. He's like there's no, which I'm sure was direction from Wes Craven. Like don't blink from this point on. So you kind of come off as not human.
Right.
But to go back to Nick and Dan Hedaya's performance, that's my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about it is that it's so old school.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone. You know, you think of the pool episode where, you know, the guy's going against his idol, or the guy that's notorious for being a great pool player. Unassuming, normal looking dude. Every Twilight Zone episode, whenever they're this evil force or this otherworldly being,
it's in disguise.
90% of the time, unless they're an alien, and even aliens sometimes look human. That's always been Twilight Zone's thing. And I like how they kind of kept it in that lane. Where Dan Hedaya, maybe inside
they humanize it. They humanize it better than any other show.
I also want to say, like, I guess, like, the most common trope is like making a deal with the devil, which Twilight Zone has done several times. So when I saw it, I've never seen this episode before. Actually, I've seen very few of the 80s Twilight Zone episodes. So I wouldn't even remember. But I guess also going into it, I'm like, dealer's choice, deal with the devil. What's the deal? Like, was the whole point, and that's what I think I mean by like, I wish it was longer and there was more time for explanation. Was the whole point of him giving them this abundance simply the fact that he got busted and he's embarrassed? Like, what is this? Like, he just gave them a bunch of cheeseburgers and beer because he got busted and he's embarrassed?
I think kind of, but like you said, there could be more to it, and you don't ever get to know that.
I like how ambiguous it is. Personally, I think the strongest thing about this like segment, we keep calling it an episode. It's technically
the segment.
A 22-minute long segment is how contained it is. It's kind of like
it almost
12.
feels like a play. It's very much in one room. There's not a lot of setting to it. That's what I love about it.
When you think of short form entertainment, short films, anthology television, where it's all one story, 25 minutes. This to me is the perfect type of story because it leaves so much to the imagination. Why did he go to these guys? Obviously, one of them was supposed to die and just didn't. And like you said, why does the devil look like this middle-aged man? Like why? Why is he? But I don't think that's the point. The point is just telling this short story in this amount of time. And I think it does it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you really think about it. Yeah,
it's got
playing poker.
It's a 3-act story. Yeah, it's got it.
And I think that's
and they
probably
meet the devil and they bust the devil.
That's probably the best thing about it. Like that, in my opinion, it when it comes to, we cover anthology television whenever we do these episodes. And when you think about some of the episodes we covered in the past, that's really the best stories in these shows. Yeah. So I always felt like it kind of works. Think about something like 12 Angry Men, even though that's a feature-length film.
No.
It's
but
literally
it's contained.
12 dudes in a room.
Yeah.
Arguing.
Oh,
this is very reminiscent of that.
Yeah, I mean that's right. Like that. The main reason I picked this episode is because like I said, it's just a bunch of great actors, just acting in a room for 22 minutes. Like it feels there's like a relatability to the them being in the room. It feels ordinary, and it works.
I think they have great chemistry too.
I feel like they could be buddies. If they 40 years. Like they want to go fishing. They're talking about their plans after it. You feel like there could be plans after it with these guys,
Yeah.
I will say, I want that fucking beer full of fucking fridge full of beer. That looks fucking fun.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I noticed in this episode. I wrote down in my notes here. I wanna show some love to. So Garrett Morris. There's one thing I noticed right away because being the amusement park enthusiast I am, I love that he's wearing a King's Dominion roller coaster t-shirt. I don't know. Sammy, I think you've been there once when you were little. I don't know if you remember.
I do.
And that's an amusement park.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, it's literally a blue. It looked blue in what we watch. It's with white lettering.
Funny that's something you would bring up.
It says roller coasters and it says like ride me at King's Dominion. And that's I think it's in Massachusetts or Pennsylvania. I forget. I noticed it right away. I was like, that's cool that he's wearing a King's Dominion
right up your alley
t-shirt. Also, I wrote down a couple of the lines here. The two things I really love. So Garrett Morris has this one line where he goes, it's one thing being the devil. It's another thing being a jerk. Yeah. He tells that to Dan Hedaya.
Like the devil's going to be like, shit, dude, you're right. You got me. I'm sorry.
I'm being a jerk. Let me slow down.
Yeah. But the delivery in the line is fantastic. He's just like, it's one thing being the devil. It's
he's my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah. My favorite like little moment in the episode, we're talking the whole time about how innocent Marty is. And he's talking about how he watched Streetcar Called Desire, not Streetcar Named Desire. He says, I was watching that movie on the TV, Streetcar Called Desire, and he said the only things that belong on a poker table are beer and cards. And he cracks himself up because he's so goofy and innocent. And it's just
he also didn't if I remember correctly, he didn't understand that it wasn't a movie about poker.
Yes. No.
Yeah. Like he was like, I watched a poker movie, or like I watched a movie about poker, and this is what they said, and I was like,
that's
nothing to do with it.
Yeah, he's the type of guy you want at your poker game because he's always going to lose money.
Yeah,
you're like, we don't have to worry about him.
We don't have to worry about him. There's another moment with Marty where he comes back from the bathroom and he wants to know what's going on, and Garrett tells him, well, Garrett's not his name, but Garrett the actor tells him, he's like, oh, Nick is the devil and Peter and him are playing for his soul. Like no just biggie. Casually, no biggie. And he's like, okay. He's just like so confused by the whole thing. Like I just love that goes back to the fact that those lines stuck out to me. I'm like, this is a pretty sharply written script for something that's probably honestly like 15 pages long.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it works well with just kind of like having one-liners in something this short, and, you know, him being the one that says those 2 lines, obviously they stuck out for that very reason, just the way the delivery in them, you know, as dumb and silly as the dialogue is.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for as a standalone episode. I think that when I remind myself, however, that it is a Twilight Zone reboot, it doesn't feel like a Twilight Zone rebooted episode, so to speak. Because you watch Twilight Zone and all of it's eerie. It ends eerie. It ends with a feeling of, you know, just confusion, and you're like, what is it? Is life real?
The happy ending.
And this was very fun and playful and happy, and that's okay. Like that's totally cool. But I guess it's just I can't knock the thing in the back of my head. Like, it's not Twilight Zone-ish-esque, but it's still enjoyable. Like, it's, you know, it's funny. I laughed more than I was scared.
There's nothing. I wouldn't say there's anything scary about
not
this.
At all.
Not at all.
But it's an amazing cast, and it's a great concept. Like, it's dope.
$19 versus his soul. I also wrote that down. $19. He goes, how much you putting in? 18. He goes, $19. $19 or my soul. So dumb. Chris, is there anything else you like about this episode?
No,
Anything
like I
that
said,
kind of stood out to you?
I covered it. Like, you know, I like the cast. I like, you know, that it's directed by Wes Craven. It doesn't feel like a Wes Craven thing, but, you know, whatever. It's TV. That's what you do. But I think like it fit what we do here. Like it fit covering this in an episode. That's why I liked it.
Yeah, I would tell people, you know, if you're going to watch, because, again, 1980s Twilight Zone is very hit and miss. And the problem is with the show is that every episode has multiple segments.
Right.
So you'll put on an episode and maybe that first segment's garbage. And then you don't realize that maybe the second or third one, depending on what episode, because some only have 2, is a good one. It's a gem. And I think this one is one of the few gems in the 1980s Twilight Zone. It's one of the standouts to me. I could not tell you off the top of my head right now another. And again, this isn't one I've seen it before, but I don't revisit it frequent. This had been maybe the first time I'd seen it in a very long time. And I've seen the entire 1980s Twilight Zone episode, and I'll tell you right now, some of them are a slog to get through. They're just not great. You end
the
up
only other
skipping
one that
them.
I can remember offhand, we mentioned before, the Bruce Willis one. That's the only other episode.
That's the very first one.
The beginning where he has a double out there, and the double each thinks that they're the real one. Like that's the only other one that I remember.
Yeah. And they do remake some old episodes in this episode.
Yeah. I mean, both the 2002
After Hours
and the 2019 did that as well. That's just a thing.
Yeah, I know the After Hours, and I mentioned it when we did our top 3 Twilight Zone, OG Twilight Zone episodes. I mentioned that the After Hours was remade for this because I've seen it, and it's not as good as the original. It's nowhere near as good as the original After Hours. But yeah, I'd say check this out. Give it a watch. Seek it out. Pretty easy to find on YouTube.
Yeah.
Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. If you're going to skip all of the Twilight Zone, 80s Twilight Zone episodes, watch this
okay
one.
Too.
Don't skip this one.
A breezy 22 minutes.
Peter, thank you for your hospitality. Maybe I can host the next game. I'll try to make sure that each one of you is invited.
So that was the Twilight Zone 80s version, Dealer's Choice. Be sure to subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Haunted Hangover. Head over to hauntedhangover.com for links to everything, including our Patreon page, which features bonus spooky content.
And if you would rate and review us, that would be greatly appreciated.
And as always, remember, the best cure for a hangover is...
More booze.
Catch you guys later.